He'd never once asked to leave early, not in 3 years, not during hurricane season when half the city flooded, not on the day his son had a fever and the school called 4 times, not during the quarterly crises, the board battles, the all-hands emergencies that seemed to materialize every other month. Daniel Brooks showed up, every single time, 7:43 a.m., like clockwork, and he stayed until the work was done. So when he stood up from his desk that Tuesday afternoon, glanced at his watch, and said those 5 words, "I need to leave early," the entire 14th floor seemed to hold its breath. Victoria Hale, CEO of Hale Dynamics, froze mid-reach for her cigarette case. The room went absolutely silent, and then he said it, calm, unbothered. "Final. I have a date." The cigarette stayed unlit between her fingers. Something behind her eyes flickered, something she hadn't felt in years. And what happened next? Nobody in that office could have predicted it. To understand why those words hit the way they did, you need to understand who Daniel Brooks was, and who Victoria Hale had become. Daniel was 34 years old, former logistics coordinator turned executive assistant, hired 3 years earlier after 11 other assistants had come and gone through Victoria's revolving door. 9 days. That was the shortest tenure. The woman who lasted 9 days reportedly cried in the elevator on the way out and never looked back. Daniel stayed, not because the job was easy, because he understood something the others didn't. Victoria Hale didn't want warmth. She wanted precision, so that's what he gave her. He arrived at 7:43 a.m. Not 7:40, not 7:45. Exactly 7:43. He calibrated her office thermostat to 68 degrees before she walked through the door. He brewed her coffee. Dark roast, no cream, half a sugar. He placed her morning briefing packet at a 45-degree angle on the desk. Not approximate, exact. The other assistants on the floor envied him. The executives called him the Phantom, a man who moved through the office like well-programmed software, efficient, invisible, essential. But there was one thing on Daniel's desk that didn't quite fit the image. Tucked between a triple monitor setup and a stack of Q3 reports sat a coffee mug, faded letters, chipped handle, "World's okayest dad." Nobody asked about it. Nobody asked Daniel about anything personal. He preferred it that way. Victoria had built her distance the hard way. At 23, fresh out of business school, she'd believed in collaboration, in mentorship, in the idea that ambition and genuine human connection could coexist. That belief got crushed in her second year at a consulting firm when a promotion she'd more than earned went to a man with half her results and twice the right connections. Her supervisor told her she was too emotional, so she stopped being emotional. By 30, she was a VP. By 34, she was CEO of Hale Dynamics, a logistics firm her father had built and nearly bankrupted before his death. She rebuilt it ruthlessly, efficiently, and entirely alone. People feared her, respected her, kept their distance. And for years, she told herself that was exactly what she wanted. Daniel had been the one exception. Not because she'd let him in, but because he never tried to push, and that, she'd discovered too late, was exactly why she'd come to depend on him. The day it happened started like every other. Victoria had just survived a brutal 3-hour board meeting. Numbers that didn't align, egos that refused to bend. By the time the conference room cleared, her neck ached and her patience was vapor. She stepped into her office. Daniel was already there, reorganizing her presentation notes with the quiet efficiency of someone who's anticipated her before she'd even formed the thought. "Reschedule the Singapore call," she said without looking up. "Push it to Thursday, same time." "Already done," Daniel replied. "I also moved your Arcadia dinner to Friday. Reservations confirmed." She nodded. "The Miller contract, legal signed off this morning. It's in your inbox." Victoria let out a slow exhale. This was why he worked. No instructions, no praise required. He simply knew. She sank into her chair, reached for the slim silver case on her desk. Inside, a single cigarette. She only smoked when the pressure became unbearable. Today qualified. She lit it, took a long, slow drag, let the tension drain from her shoulders. Daniel didn't comment. He never did. He existed in her orbit without disrupting it. A rare and valuable thing in a world full of people who needed constant acknowledgement. And that was precisely why what happened next felt like the ground cracking open beneath her Feet. Daniel glanced at his watch. 4:47 p.m. He stood. Miss Hale. His voice was calm and even, completely normal. I need to leave early today. Victoria blinked. In 3 years, Daniel had never left before 6:30. He'd worked through holidays, stayed during crises, covered weekend emergencies without so much as a sigh. Something wrong? She asked, keeping her tone flat. No, he said. He adjusted his cuffs, completely unbothered. And then he said it. I have a date. The cigarette stopped halfway to her lips. A date. The words hung in the air like smoke. Victoria's mind went blank. Then it raced. Then it stumbled all over itself trying to find solid ground. Daniel had a date. With someone. Of course with someone. What kind of thought was that? But who? When had this happened? How had she not known? And that's when a realization hit her like cold water. She didn't know. She didn't know anything about Daniel's life outside that building. Didn't know his favorite food. Didn't know where he lived. Didn't know if he had family, hobbies, friends. Didn't even know if there was a story behind that worn-out coffee mug with the faded letters that sat on his desk every single day. She'd treated him like a function, a perfectly calibrated function, and now he was walking out the door to meet someone who probably knew his favorite movie. That night, something inside Victoria Hale cracked wide open. She told herself to let it go, told herself his personal life was none of her business, told herself she was a CEO with better things to do than stand at a floor-to-ceiling window, watching her assistant walk across a parking lot. But she stood there anyway. 14 floors below, Daniel emerged from the building. He checked his phone, smiled at something on the screen. That smile, wide, unguarded, completely unperformed, was one she had never once seen in 3 years. And it was directed at someone else entirely. Something in her chest tightened into a fist. She imagined him meeting someone, a woman with an easy laugh. No walls. Someone who asked questions and actually listened to the answers. Someone who got to see the version of Daniel Brooks that existed outside fluorescent lights and quarterly projections. The image made her feel physically sick before she could talk herself out of it, before the rational, controlled, ice-cold CEO part of her brain could intervene. Victoria grabbed her purse and headed for the elevator. She caught up with him in the lobby. Daniel. He turned, surprised. Miss Hale? She didn't have a plan, didn't have an excuse. She only knew she couldn't let him leave like this, like he was nothing more than a closing bracket on a very long workday. I need to ask you something. His expression shifted, cautious, curious. And before she could stop herself, before 3 years of carefully maintained distance could reassert itself, she reached out and caught his wrist. He froze. Her pulse was visible at her throat. Why? She said, her voice quiet and strained. Have you never asked me out? The question detonated in the air between them. Daniel stared at her. For a man who prided himself on composure, he looked genuinely stunned. You heard me, she said. 3 years. You've been right there every single day. And you never, she stopped, shook her head. I don't understand. And for the first time since he'd known her, Victoria Hale didn't sound like a CEO. She sounded lost. She realized then, no one was coming to save her from herself. She had to do that on her own. Daniel's jaw tightened. He looked at her for a long moment, really looked at her, the way he never quite allowed himself to during office hours. You never wanted that, he said quietly. How do you know what I wanted? Her voice cracked on the last word. Did you ever ask? No, he exhaled. Because you made it very clear that personal questions weren't part of the job. Victoria flinched. She started to argue, then stopped, stepped back. Because he was right, and they both knew it. You've worked with me for 3 years, he continued. You know my schedule to the minute. You know how I take my coffee. But you've never once asked me about my life outside this building. She couldn't defend herself. I'm sorry, she said, and then, quieter. I thought maybe you just didn't see me that way. Like I was the title and nothing else. Daniel's expression shifted, something complicated moving behind his eyes. You think I don't see you? His voice dropped. I see you every day, Victoria. The sound of her first name in his voice felt dangerous, necessary. I see when you're exhausted, when you're frustrated, when you're pretending everything's fine because you think showing weakness will cost you everything. I see all of it. He paused. But I also see the walls, and I respected them, because that's what you needed. What if I don't need them anymore? The question hung between them, fragile and enormous. Daniel's chest ached. Then you should have said something, he said gently. before I made plans with someone else. Victoria's face went pale. He pulled out his phone, turned the screen toward her. A text message. Dad, don't forget, 6 o'clock, you promised. Below it, a photo. A hand-drawn birthday invitation. Crayon stars. Misspelled words. The kind of thing only an 8-year-old could create, and only a father could find perfect. Victoria's breath stopped. Your son? His name is Lucas, Daniel said quietly. He turns 8 today. They had no idea, either of them, what the next 2 hours would change. The world tilted. Victoria felt heat flood her face. Shame, relief, and confusion, all crashing into each other at once. You have a son, she said faintly. I do. I didn't know. You never asked. The words weren't cruel, just factual, and they cut deeper than anger ever could have. Victoria covered her mouth with one hand. God, Daniel, I'm so sorry. I know what you thought. He studied her, and I understand why. But Victoria, if we're going to have this conversation, whatever this is, you should know that Lucas is the most important person in my life. Anything else comes second. That's non-negotiable. She nodded. Immediately. I wouldn't want it any other way. He raised an eyebrow. You say that now, but you don't know what it means. Cancelled plans. Early mornings. School plays in the middle of the workday. Can you handle that? Yes. And I won't let anyone, not even you, make him feel like he's competing for my attention. Something in her throat tightened. She thought of her own childhood. Boarding schools. Nannies. A father who measured love in stock portfolios. He should always come first, she said. Always. Daniel studied her face for a long, quiet moment. Then he did something neither of them expected. Do you want to come with me? She stared at him. What? To dinner. It's just Lucas and me. A pizza place downtown. Nothing fancy. He hesitated. But if you come, it's not as my boss. It's as someone I'm choosing to let into my life. And that comes with rules. Rules. Lucas doesn't know what I do. He doesn't know about Hale Dynamics or your title. Tonight you're just Victoria, not the CEO, just a person. She felt something strange unfold in her chest. For 3 years her title had been armor, protection, power, identity. And now Daniel was asking her to take it off. I can do that, she said. Can you? I want to. He nodded once. Okay, but if at any point he asks questions, I'm answering honestly. And if you feel uncomfortable, no hard feelings. She agreed. La Roa Trattoria was tucked between a bookstore and a laundromat on a street Victoria had never once noticed. Hand-painted sign, warm yellow windows, checkered tablecloths, and mismatched chairs, garlic bread, and noise, and absolutely no valet parking. It was perfect. Lucas was already there. Dark hair, serious eyes, a miniature Daniel, except where Daniel was controlled. Lucas was pure, unfiltered energy. The moment he spotted his father, he launched himself out of the booth. Dad! Happy birthday! Happy my birthday. Daniel laughed, a real laugh, wide and completely unguarded. And Victoria realized she had never once heard him laugh like that. Then Lucas noticed her. Who's that? This is Victoria, Daniel said. She's a friend. I invited her. Is that okay? Lucas looked her up and down with the frank, unfiltered judgment of an 8-year-old. Do you like pizza? Victoria blinked. Yes. Good. Dad's friends have to like pizza. It's a rule. I didn't know there were rules. There's lots of rules. He climbed back into the booth. Like no phones at the table. And you have to try the garlic knots even if you think you're full. And if you don't finish your pizza, you take it home because wasting food is bad. Victoria slid into the seat across from him. Those sound like good rules. I made them up, Lucas said proudly. And then, halfway through the pepperoni pizza, right in the middle of a story about a volcano, science project, and too much baking soda, Lucas put down his slice and looked at his father with sudden seriousness. Dad, have you found a mom for me yet? Daniel froze. Victoria stopped breathing. Lucas looked between them, confused. What? You said if you met someone special, you'd introduce us. Daniel's eyes flicked to Victoria. She couldn't move. Yes, he said quietly. She is. Lucas beamed. Then she could be my mom. Lucas, she likes pizza. She knows about velociraptors. She's not weird. He turned to Victoria directly. Do you like my dad? The table went still. Victoria could feel Daniel's gaze on her like a hand on her shoulder. Yes, she said. Her voice was steady. I do. Lucas spread his hands. Then what's the problem? Out of the mouths of children. The drive back was quiet. Lucas fell asleep in the booster seat, one hand still clutching a leftover garlic knot. Daniel drove carefully, taking every turn slow. When they pulled up in front of her building, Victoria didn't move right away. "I'm sorry," she said finally, "for not seeing you. For 3 years of knowing your schedule and knowing nothing about your life." She exhaled. "That wasn't okay. You were my boss," he said. Boundaries made sense. It was more than that. She looked at him. "I was scared of letting anyone close, of wanting something I didn't think I deserved." Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then, "What do you want, Victoria?" She didn't rush the answer. "I want to know you, the real you, not just the assistant who makes my life easier. What you read, what makes you laugh when no one's watching. Because I care about you. I think I have for a long time. I just didn't let myself say it." He reached across the console, found her hand. His thumb brushed her knuckles. "I wouldn't be here if I didn't feel the same." Later that night, standing at her penthouse window with the city glittering below, Victoria's phone buzzed. "Lucas wants to know if you'll come to his soccer game Saturday." She smiled. "Quiet, private, real. I'll be there. Some walls take 3 years to come down, but when they finally do, what's waiting on the other side is worth every single day of the wait."